Prince recently, of course, he died a while ago, but his
Mhm.
estate, there's an ongoing battle. And I was thinking about him and Chadwick Boseman, who didn't have a will.
Yeah.
When Prince died, he didn't have a will. And now it's heating up because the IRS, their
Yes.
calculations are showing that the executors of his estate undervalued it by 50% or $80 million. And they
Mm.
determined that it's worth 163.2 million,
Mm.
but the estate is saying it's only worth 82 million, and the discrepancy is where the IRS wants their money.
Yes.
So I I'm not mad at the estate because I see what they're doing, but how should
The
we be look?
problem is the problem started before, right? So an estate plan is important for everyone. People might be like, "Well, I don't have an estate," right? This is what an estate plan, right, is. It's a plan for what happens to your property, your dependents, your assets if you pass away. That is what an estate plan is. And so you might say, "Well, I don't need an estate plan." Do you have dependents? You got babies? You need an estate plan, right? You owe money that's not going to disappear upon your death. You need an estate plan. You have assets, a car, a home, some money in the bank, a life insurance policy that comes through your job, a pension. Then you need an estate plan, right? And so here's the components. It's not just enough to create your plan. You also want to make sure it's executed, which means signing it and funding it if so necessary. So here are the components of an estate plan, right? So one, you want to make sure you take care of your beneficiaries form. So beneficiaries forms, these are like your bank account statement. Your, like my husband and I were just looking at his pension statement, and his ex-girlfriend was still on there because we had not looked at it in so long. I thought that would have been some. Can you imagine? I said, if you would have died and she got your pension, I would have woke you back up, then killed you, right? Right? So you want to make sure bank accounts, employee benefits, life insurance policies, keep the benefit. This is one. Keep those beneficiaries up to date. Because here's the thing, Karen. In your will, you could say, I want my daughter to have all of my money. If your beneficiaries on your bank account says your sister, your beneficiaries trumps your will. That what you
Oh,
have,
wait a minute.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
hold on.
yep.
Go ahead.
So people don't realize that. Like, so you might say, oh, no. What you have put down as your beneficiary on your bank account, your employee benefits, insurance policies, that trumps anything else that you might have out there. That comes first and foremost. So that's why when it comes to your estate plan, if you don't do anything else, look today on your bank account. Is that the person you want to receive, to have access to this bank account when you're no longer here? Look at your employee benefits. Look at your insurance policies. Is that the person you want? With an estate plan, people always think when an estate plan, I should look 20, 30 years out. No. You should look 5 years out and update it every 5 years. Because Karen, let's just say you have a 5-year-old, right? If you say, I'm going to make an estate plan for 20 years out, well, in 20 years, your child will be 25. That's a different look. Your child 5 years from now is going to be 10. So you would provide some sort of guardian for them. That's why with an estate plan, it's really a 5-year out plan, and then you adjust it every 5 years because you want it to be relevant to if I should pass away now. That's important. So one, beneficiaries. Two, if you've got minors, guardianship. So your guardianship plan should be inside your will. But if you don't do anything else, those two things, if you've got minor children, it's not enough to say, well, we went down to church and I said, this is the godmommy, this is the goddaddy. That's nice. But what does it say in your will? You need to have a guardianship plan in place. And because if not, that person is not going to have any legal remedy. And like, if this is your significant other that you had this child with, that's different, but what if something happens to both of y'all? So that's two, guardianship. Three, writing that will, right? So your will, think about your will is your afterlife avatar, right? It's going to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself, when you're no longer here. So your will is there to say, this is what Karen said she wanted. She wanted that this is what happens to her show. This is what happens to her home. This is what happens to her things. Your will is there to speak for you when you can no longer speak for yourself. You want to make sure with your will that you choose an executor of your will. So someone who is responsible. Who do you think? Basically, you're saying what you want to happen in your will, but who's gonna make that happen for you? Is your younger sister the most responsible? Is your cousin the most responsible? Do you have a best friend that you really trust? And so you can certainly DIY, like go online and get those DIY wills if like you're just kind of starting out. But ideally, you really want to have an attorney work on your will, especially the more money that you make or the more assets that you have.
Can you make your bit before the beneficiary? And we're going to talk about the Jacob Blake the shooting and the police officers when we come back from the break that will not be charged, which is horrific. But can you make your beneficiary the executor of your will? So can you say the estate of, so as opposed to it being a person that you have to keep updating, can it be your estate? All of everything goes to the estate, and then you have the executor of the estate follow your plan in your will.
Yes, and you can also, so you're thinking too, probably like because some people have trust, right? So you can have a trustee who really is in charge of making sure that, because when you are alive, you are likely the trustee. Because a will is what happens with your assets when you're gone. A trust is what happens with your assets while you're still here, right? And so at least it's not just while you're still here, but it gets activated while you're still here. So as soon as you sign your trust and you fund it and you put your assets into it, that trust is activated. So you are likely going to be the trustee, right? And then when you're no longer here, then you have a secondary trustee. But a will really does not get activated until you go. So if you have a net worth or investable, or if you have assets over $100,000, you can consider a trust. But if you have assets over $500,000, you absolutely should have a trust, because wills give people if you have a will, right, and you don't have a trust, a will is public knowledge. So that's why we know all Prince's business, because we all like, we're not even, because he didn't even have a will. So if you don't have a will, or you just have a will and don't have a trust, we can see, it's like pay-per-view to your personal life. Like, oh, we did what? Yeah, how much? Someone can literally they can look it up and see exactly what assets you left behind. A will, like I said, it becomes public knowledge, because after it goes to probate, which probate is, to be clear, it's just court-supervised execution of your will. And it can be long and it can be expensive, because you have basically this admin determining what's going to happen with the legacy of your life, So you can have this will and think you're doing something, but the truth of the matter is, if you have a lot of assets, not having a trust means that you really leave your heirs open for folks to know exactly what was left to whom and for whatever reason. And so you looking into a trust once you get to over $100,000. Trusts are not inexpensive to set up. That's why they say you want to have at least assets of $100,000 or more, but definitely if you have $500,000. So even while you're here, considering setting things up, I know it seems like a lot, but these are things you can do every 6 months or so, like healthcare directives, right? So should something happen to you, what do you want to happen? So that's when you could create a living will and a durable power of attorney. So with a living will, that's just when if something happens while you are alive, but you can't make your wishes known because you have some advanced terminal illness or some severe injury. Because remember I said, Karen, that with a will, it's activated when you're no longer here. With a living will, it's activated when you're here, but because of something traumatic or really terrible that's happened to you, you can't make choices for yourself. And a durable power of attorney just means that somebody who will act on your behalf for your legal, medical, and financial areas when you're unable to do so. So, for example, I get into a car accident, I fall into a coma, right? I have a living will that says, this is what I want to happen. I want to be resuscitated. I want you to do everything to save my life. My durable power of attorney, let's just say it's my husband, is going to enact, although he gets to behave as me, has access to my funds and says, this is what Tiffany wants. But because he's my durable power of attorney, it's not forever. If I wake up from my coma and I'm well again, then I take my life back. That part is really important to understand. So it's not like, oh my gosh, when I'm feeling better, like how Britney Spears' father is still in control of her life.
Yes. Yeah.
That's different,
Yeah.
Because you want to consider things like that. Like, what's your long-term health plan, right? So do you want to be in a home? Especially if you don't have any children, you might want to consider prepaying into a long-term health plan now. Or you're going to self-fund your long-term health plan. Like, what does that look like? Especially when you're over 40, these are things you want to start considering, right?
Facts.
You might
Facts.
consider setting up like I said, like a living will, right? Well, a living will is the same thing really just as a will. It just means, and this is what a lot of wealthy folks do. It's like you can put things into, not a living will, I'm sorry, a living trust. You can put things into a trust, and what happens is you can bypass certain fees that are tremendous as a result of them being in a trust, because you can start to assign ownership to people while you're still here, while still taking advantage of the ownership of your assets currently. So I can be like, this is in my trust, this goes to my stepdaughter, this goes to my nieces and my nephew, but I can still enjoy the fruits of my labor. But when I pass, that, like, you know, that death tax doesn't pass on to them because of the way I've set up my, the way I set up my trust. So you want to be mindful and thinking of that. I'm just questioning, because I read somewhere that what Prince did was, once he realized that he was really sick, he started texting people his wishes. I'm like, that's not how that works. You cannot text people your wishes. Like, you have to have some legal. And I'm sure Chadwick was just thinking to himself, I don't want to claim that because, you know, I'm gonna get well. But here's the thing. Even if you are like, I don't want to claim I'm going to get well, unless you are a vampire, one day you will die. So whether Chadwick was going to pass when he did, or he was going to make a full recovery and live till 90, he was still eventually going to pass. Eventually, we will all pass. No one gets out of it alive, right? That's the way life works. So think about a will, think about your beneficiaries, and not just that, but execute your will, signing it. Because people have made wills, not signed them, create trust, and don't put their assets into it. So all of this work without executing and funding these plans. And like I just turned 41, and this is something I'm working on now. It's not an easy thing, but I have so many businesses. So what happens? I have to think about, what does succession look like for my businesses? You know, you want to make sure that you don't leave your family in turmoil, because they're already in turmoil because you are no longer here. Financially, you want to make sure that they don't have to wonder what your wishes are and what's going to happen with your stuff, and then when you're not here anymore.